If John isn't making sales, we say, okay, let's get on him about making sales. But perhaps we should ask, why isn't he making sales? Someone says, he isn't making enough calls. We say, okay, let's get on him about making calls. Well, maybe we should ask another question first. Why isn't he making calls? Well, it's because he isn't getting up early and getting out into the marketplace. We say, okay, let's get on him about getting up early and getting out into the marketplace. Well, perhaps we should ask just one more question. Why isn't he getting up early and getting out into the marketplace? Now we have probably gotten to the heart of the problem. Perhaps it's something personal, problems at home, not his sales skill. The real problems are usually about 3 or 4 questions deep. So if you get good at asking questions, you can save yourself a lot of time by getting right at the heart of the matter when dealing with other people. Otherwise, you tend to waste valuable time just finding out what the problem really is. Now here is the last part of time management. Learn to think on paper. From all of my experience working on many projects and in many countries, one of the major time savers is thinking on paper. It is so important to take things out of your head and put them on paper, then work from the paper. Building your business is a lot like building a house. You take the ideas out of your head, put them on paper, and then build from the plan. We have a saying on this idea: operate from document, not from thought. It's just about over when a person wakes up in the morning and says, let's see, what shall I do today? Too late, right? The best thing you can do now is to take today off and at least plan tomorrow. Let me give you 4 major ways to think on paper. The first is a journal. I spend a lot of time talking about journals in my lectures and programs, primarily because it is such an invaluable tool for the serious student of the better life. A journal is merely a gathering place for all the good information that comes your way, from sermons, from books, from lectures, from business conferences, magazines, thinking time, research, any source of information that you feel is worth keeping. Don't let the good ideas of life escape you. Remember, most good ideas usually only come by once. Get into the habit of capturing them with pen and paper by making daily use of your journal. Now maybe you won't write in it every day, but at least make sure it's with you every day. Here's the second way to think on paper: a projects book. This is simply a ring binder with tabs in it to help you keep track of all the current people and projects you are involved with and need to work on to make all the parts of your life work to the maximum. If you are working with people, give them each a tab in your projects book. Then under this tab, you keep a running account of all the current information you need to know about that person: performance, family, goals, strength, needs, perhaps even some graphs showing recent progress or comparisons to past performance. Essentially, you make a note of all the information you need to know so that when you sit down to have a meeting with this person, you have all the pertinent facts there before you in order to have a meaningful and productive conversation. Without this habit, it's so easy to take up time talking with someone and get so very little accomplished because most of the meeting ends up by being devoted to bringing you up to date on the facts you could have already had in your projects book.
Everybody, let us say together: lead and grow your wings on the way down. See, in order to control your destiny, you've got to be a risk taker. You got to be willing to risk people talking about it. You got to be willing to risk someone saying no. You got to be willing to fail again and again and again. You're different. You're an entrepreneur. You're strange. You're not like everybody else. We live in a world where we're told more about our limitations rather than our potential, and so most people just can't see themselves doing better. But you're different. You see some things they can't see. And I encourage you, every one of you in this room right now, you're here for a reason. How many of you know people who should be here? Raise your hands, please. Yes. But you know what? They're in their rightful place. Their rightful place is where their thoughts have brought them. Their true place is where their thoughts can take them. Everybody is in their rightful place. Here's something else. Seek out positive information. I want you to write this down. My Facebook page is brown.less. Every day we post a positive message there. Every day, brown.less. Because you're in this room, I want you to write this down. Because we're going to send you, we're going to do something called presentation power. You're going to get a chance to view some videos that will give you some directions. But more importantly, I'll tell you what I'm going to send you. I'm going to send you 7 power strategies of how to be a powerful storyteller. So email me at yes@lesbrown.com and say, send me the 7 principles. Mention that you were at this convention. We'll send that to you free. It will give you a guideline how to tell your story. When I started off this presentation, I started off telling my story. I was born in the poor section of Miami, Florida, in Liberty City, born in an abandoned building with a twin brother. Do you remember I told you that? My mother worked on Miami Beach as a domestic worker, making up beds, cooking for families. Remember I told you that? See, your story is your power. How many of you have gone through some things? Raise your hands, please. How many of you have experienced some things in your life? Raise your hands. How many of you have periods in your life like me where you're temporarily insane? Raise your hand, please. Your story. The presentation power will tell you how to tell your story. I've given lectures at Harvard, Yale, spoken around the world, telling my story. You got a story too. Here's what the power of the story does, and why it's important in your presentation and building your organization, and why it's going to give you the upper hand and how to recruit people, and how many like to get A players? Raise your hands, please. Good. Here's what your story does. Write this down. Distract. See, how people live their lives is a result of the story they believe about themselves. When you're presenting one-on-one or a small group or in a large group, when you tell your story, you're creating an interruption. When you're telling your story about the business of being on a path of creating financial independence, you're interrupting their story, what psychologists call the self-explanatory style. So distract. Let us say together, distract. Here's the other one. Say dispute. When you are going through your presentation, and we're going to teach you how to do this, you're dismantling their limited belief system where they've been programmed to believe only in having a job, the journey of the broke, where they're miserable. They go to work, where they pay them just enough to keep them from quitting, and they work just hard enough to keep from getting fired. That's what you call mixed emotions. Seeing somebody you hate drive off a cliff in your car. You're glad they're gone, but not in my car.
And it begins when you understand. It begins, Marcus, when you understand. It begins when you understand. He still wants you. He still wants you. Your voice in the choir, your message, your service. He still wants you. He still wants you. You're still his daughter. You're still his baby girl. Mistakes and all. He still wants you. He's still got a plan for your life. I'm not excusing your shame. I'm not justifying your mistake. I'm telling you that his grace is bigger than your disgrace and that he still wants you. I'm telling you that God is bigger than your deepest secret, your darkest night, your daughter out of wedlock, your disgrace, your drug addiction, your problem, your pain, your self-medication, your trauma, your family crisis. The scandal in your family is not bigger than the grace of our God. I came to tell you he still wants you. Came to get to you before you end up in the potter's field, self-destructing, self-medicating, self-destroying every opportunity over something you can't get rid of. God loves you, man. That God actually loves you. He still wants you. And you thought you just zoomed in to be zooming in. God wanted you to hear this word. This particular message has got your name on it. I can't help that she don't want you. He still wants you. I can't help that they're talking about you. He still wants you. I can't help how they stare at you. God said, I still want you.
Do you believe that every person has the ability to choose the right path, the spiritually enlightened path?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not easy. It can be tremendously difficult. It's easier to quit. It's easier to succumb. It's easier to give in. But to go forward, that's tremendously difficult. You have to be bold to do that, to say, no, this is not where I'm going to be.
Think about it in your own life. Haven't you had some area of your life where you raised your standard and your life has never been the same? Maybe at one time in your life you smoked cigarettes, or you did something and you did it for years and you kept trying to change it, kept telling yourself I should. And then one day something happened. Something just clicked you over. Something took you over that kind of tipping point. And inside yourself, you said, no more. And it was a very, very different experience, wasn't it? Something inside you shifted.
Most people avoid the struggle. Most people go through life avoiding pain. And when you go through life like that, something in you dies. Something in you that you never activate is lying dormant in there, that you never get a chance to call on because you have not challenged yourself. Somebody said, the land of familiarity belongs to the dead.
We're going to play to win now. We're not playing to play. We're not playing to see how we do. We're not playing for fun. Once you start getting some winning, you start changing.
You must have faith. You've got to believe in yourself.
You talk different. You walk different. All of a sudden, this isn't the same damn human being.
You've got to believe in your abilities. You got to believe in your service, your company, your ideas, unquestionably. You got to have faith, and that faith gives you patience.
You can change you. You'd be surprised what a little winning would do. You'd be surprised how good you'd be if you just decide to win.
At the end of those kind of days, when you feel good about yourself, self-confidence starts to rise. You know that if you can have this kind of a good day, you can have another one the next day, and those days become the weeks become the months, and the month becomes a powerful year. Self-confidence comes from the lack of neglect. If you will not neglect to do small, daily disciplines, that's where self-confidence comes from.
Everyone takes the limits of their own vision for the limits of the world. Arthur Schopenhauer. There is all around you right now the reflections of your world belief. They're so ever present that you don't even see them. All the assumption that you've made about the world, the things that are possible, what you're capable of, who you are, the very definition of what it means to be alive, all of it is completely invisible.
So whenever you feel like your professor or teacher has lost their mind because they're overwhelming you with a workload that seemingly will take up all of your time, I need you to pause and recall the reason why you made the choice to invest your time. And never lose sight of the fact that you are destined to shine. Never lose sight of the fact that you were made for this grind.
You have to see past limitations and see only potential. You can't be looking at what the chances are that you're going to get through something. You have to know in your heart of hearts, somehow, some way, you have prepared yourself well enough. You will get through this moment. You will find something on the other side.
And so accept the responsibility. See yourself as primarily responsible for your outcomes and your experiences.
And make no mistake, those limits are self-placed. And for the people that are willing to push that, for people that are willing to go beyond that, for people who understand there are things in this world that they're prepared to die for, and it is the thing that they put at the center of their life. It is the thing that they are living for. But they're not going to stop, and they understand that where the human mind thinks it will break is far short of where it will actually break.
Never lose sight of the fact that no hole is too deep for you to climb up out of. And above all else, your why will never ever allow you to withdraw.
And as long as you've done the work, as long as you've understood that every moment leading up to this has been about practice, it's been about putting in the work, it's been about having the discipline to do the things that other people are not willing to do, so when the game time comes, you're ready.
So let me tell you something. Everybody has a dream, but there is a behavior that must follow your belief system. Remember this. Behavior follows belief.
I spoke at an education summit for Microsoft. I also spoke at an education summit for Apple. At the education summit for Microsoft, I would say that 70% of the executives spent about 70% of their presentations talking about how to beat Apple. At the Apple Education Summit, 100% of the executives spent 100% of their presentations talking about how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn. One is playing this way, and one is playing that way. One is playing finite, and the other one is playing infinite. Guess which one gets frustrated. So at the end of my talk at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the new Zune when it was a thing. And let me tell you, this thing was spectacular. It was the most elegant piece of technology I'd ever used. The user interface was incredible. The design was spectacular. I absolutely loved it. It was easy to use, and it was bright and gorgeous and fantastic. It didn't work on iTunes, which is a different problem, so I couldn't use it, but it was amazing. And elegant. My God, it was elegant. So I'm sitting in the back of a taxi with a very senior Apple executive, sort of employee number 12 kind of guy. And, you know, I like to stir pots. So I turned to him, I said, you know, Microsoft gave me their new Zune. And it is so much better than your iPod Touch. And he turned to me and he said, I have no doubt. Conversation over. Because the infinite player understands sometimes you're ahead and sometimes you're behind. Sometimes your product is better and sometimes it's worse. The goal isn't to be the best every day. The goal isn't to outdo your competition every day. That's a finite construction. If I had said to Microsoft, I've got the new iPod Touch and it's so much better than your Zune, they would have said, can we see it? What does it do? React, 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 react. Finite players play to beat the people around them. Infinite players play to be better than themselves. To wake up every single day and say, how can we make our company a better version of itself today than it was yesterday? How can we create a product this week that's better than the product we created last week? We also have to play the infinite game. It's not about being ranked number one. It's not about having more followers on Twitter than your friends. It's not about outdoing anyone. It's about how to outdo yourself. It's not about selling more books or getting more TED views than somebody else. It's about how to make sure that the work that you're producing is better than the work you produced before. You are your competition. And that is what ensures you stay in the game the longest. And that is what ensures you find joy. Because the joy comes not from comparison, but from advancement.